Hollywood retains the richest storehouse of American mythology in our time, and if its coffers are regularly looted to vacancy, as in the case of the Western, the musical, or the film noir, they are also refilled by the looting of other stores: video games, TV shows, home video, and of course, comic book superheroes. For about 50 years, give or take, the Western was the gold standard for white America's mythology, like the Greeks who rewrote the sack of Troy as a revenge saga for some imagined Trojan slight. So Hollywood decked itself in the props and dressings of the Western as a celebration of our achievement, in all defiance of the historical facts and plain contradiction. Monument Valley, the Great Plains, cattle herds, and cowboy hats, all symbols of romance. Great directors would challenge the infallibility of the myth, questioning the morals of the sheriff, the rancher, the gun, and the rope. So powerful are the tropes of the genre that, despite its relative unuse in our time, directors like Andrew Dominik and Quentin Tarantino have mined its riches explicitly to expose the hypocrisies at the heart of American culture. Then there's the boxing picture, its scruffy urban counterpart, sappy, sentimental, and tough all at once, America's blood-spattered answer to Charles Dickens' Victorian melodramas. It is indoor cinema, about small rooms and tight spaces with no room to maneuver. Unlike the Western, there are no panoramic horizons, only a four-sided ring bound by elastic ropes and a carousel of flashing lights. The cheers from unseen faces, screaming, cheering, and booing. The props are minimalist, almost surreal. Gloves, shoes, a robe, a towel, sweat, blood, the ring of a bell, and the referee's count. Unburdened by politics or historicity, as in the case of the Western, or the moral transgression of crime pictures, because neither heroes or villains are ever killed by gunfire in the ring, the boxing picture is just about a guy beating another guy. The setting itself, the bright ring at center of a dark hall, distant cousin to the cinema itself, is a kind of Freudian snapshot of the inner psyche, ego strutting down the aisle to its theme song, about to confront id. The themes tend to be bone deep. Stallone poured into Rocky the fear of being near 30 years old without a career breakthrough. The hero of Creed used anger to shadowbox his way out of family expectations. Million Dollar Baby was about losing the biggest bout of them all, unfairly no less, because real life does cheat. The great 2010 documentary Boxing Gym feels like a meditation on time itself, the gym's timer buzzing off at intervals regular as a Buddhist chant. Maybe the greatest of them all is Raging Bull, in true Scorsese fashion, the story of a man's fear that he is mere animal, that there is no angel buried in the flesh. The plots always build their drumroll outside the ring, before the fight, between the fights, rolling up a pulse and rhythm that comes straight from the human artery, the will to stay upright, stay alive, stay awake, fighting, sweating, and in pain but alive. The real enemy is always the hero's soft spot. The opponent is just the guy to hit him there, hard as he can. The Fighter from 2010 has David O. Russell in its corner, but this is all Mark Wahlberg's fight. His fingerprints are on every scene, the production carried on his shoulders for years as a passion project passed from one director to another. The film is based on the true-life story of Mickey Ward, who followed in his older brother's footsteps as a pro boxer, struggling with continued losses and going on a hiatus before fighting his way back to become a champion. The parallels here are not insignificant. Wahlberg is also from a large Boston suburbs family, with an older brother reaching early fame as a member of New Kids on the Block. Mark followed in his brother's footsteps but lost his way in an adolescence of gang running, racist street attacks, and stints in jail before getting himself together and fighting to become one of Hollywood's go-to leading men. What war stories Ward and Wahlberg must have had the first time they sat down over a beer. I wonder about people like this sometimes. The tenacity that they have must be extraordinary. Something ingrained and nurtured to near indestructibility. What an ornery cuss you've got to be to punch your way out of those voices in your head, keeping you down, telling you it's too late, it's over, give up. It's what makes the boxing picture such a visceral thrill, the violence of a man's rage turned outward and inward at once, not only for destruction but for purification. Family itself is the fear Ward confronts in The Fighter, or perhaps allegiance to family, to the identity it gives Ward because he lacks the resolve to strike out and craft, define, and defend his own identity. His mother is domineering, a hurricane of big hair and big nails and cigarette smoke, well played by Melissa Leo. His sisters ride the wind like harpies, pelting him from every side, keeping him contained in the eye of the storm. Ward steps to the edge, threatening to escape, but he's too afraid, a dog who's been on the leash too long. It takes a woman from the outside to yank him free and set him straight. It's no wonder the real family of Mickey Ward took issue with their representation here, because they're the movie's real villain. This is material squarely in the David O. Russell wheelhouse. From Flirting with Disaster to Silver Linings Playbook, he's been chronicling the struggle of people caught by familial identity for 2 decades. Russell's films generally don't move me, and I can't say why exactly. They seem too cute, like New Yorker cartoons only New Yorker readers find clever. But when he approaches the material of other writers, as here as in Three Kings for instance, he shows real muscle. Christian Bale gives yet another fantastic character performance as Dickie Eklund, the older brother, sometime boxer, and full-time crack addict who runs around like a goggle-eyed Looney Tune about to go splat on the grill of a big rig. Bale has always had a distinctive look, the kind you wouldn't think he could act his way out of, and yet from American Psycho to The Big Short and even Terrence Malick's latest, Knight of Cups, he shows how deeply he transforms from inside out. And even if Wahlberg isn't an actor of great range, he holds the center of this picture like a rock. If The Fighter doesn't quite stand as tall as the real titans of the genre, well, it's still pretty damned good. One quibble I have with the script is minor. When Mickey Ward goes to face his big climatic fight, he gets a final piece of advice from Dickie, whose training he's long since rejected. Dickie suggests a certain tactic for Mickey to win the fight, and of course it works. But I'd have liked it if Dickie had pointed out an essential flaw in Mickey's style instead. It suggested that if Mickey didn't stop dropping his left, he was going to get thrashed, something like that. Because family may never know your strengths, but they sure know your weaknesses. And if family's good at anything, it's jabbing you right where you're weakest.
Boy, Billy, that you really nitpicked the screenplay.
I know
it's a good point, though.
It's a great point.
Yeah, it is.
It's
it
like
really
I
is.
feel like it just, in a slight way, betrays the theme of the movie.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I think
which
you're right.
is,
Yeah,
it's a trite Hollywood way of treating a resolution. Like obviously the movie's building up to this resolution between the brothers,
sure.
and that's its method for conveying that. But I think it betrays its material, which is family doesn't come along and give you a magic fucking potion to save your life. It's the very fact that family beats you down, and the movie is fucking called The Fighter. So even in that redemption, it should be something that beats him down.
Do you think that it would be a stronger movie if he rejected the help, continued to reject the help of his family and moved on?
Well, Joe, that's real easy to say, but this is all based on reality.
I know. Well, we're talking
but they're
about
twisting. I would be interested to know how much that's based in fact. I mean, I firmly do not believe that Mickey Ward went to visit his brother in jail, and his brother gave him exactly the secret formula to beat the big fight at the end.
Yeah,
I don't buy that. That's a Hollywood.
They're
that's a
massaging
Hollywood
reality
manipulation to begin with. So if you're going to manipulate it, if you're going to manipulate reality, as they clearly do in this movie,
okay,
use it for the right ends.
But he was in his corner though for that fight.
Yeah. Do you think it would have been a stronger film if he refused to have his brother in the corner and left his brother? It would have been more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
would have hit harder.
I think it's part of the David O. Russell thing, which is that he always wraps things up pretty neatly. And it doesn't settle with me.
He does do that, Billy. You're right. I mean, because he really
everything always turns out okay,
and he gets dirty and he gets nasty, and he's always looking into the soul of humanity. And then you're right. At the end, it's just always.
I always feel like he just basically reaffirms bourgeois ideas of family and friends and society, and however kooky and crazy we are, it's all gonna work out. Don't worry.
It's always the same movie in one way or another too, and you're right about that, because I was thinking the same thing. It's always about an individual who's tied down by his family and needs to rise above it, and then always that individual comes to terms and accepts them for their flaws, and everything. Yes, everything.
And there's always like a contrast. He's always being torn in parts. He's being dragged in two directions, right? And
it's she too.
Manages
sometimes
to resolve that. He always has the same resolution, which is, I'm not going to choose one way or the other. All of us have to learn to get along together, and that's fine. I mean, that's a good thing, but it's very, Frank Capra.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe that's his experience though too.
And that's why when he's good, he's I think I think this is a pretty good picture,
Yeah,
like,
you're right, Billy.
material
Yeah,
for-
American Hustle, like the Bale, who's the central character in American Hustle, is being torn between two women, and all he's doing is just trying to make everything work for the trio.
yeah.
And it all gets wrapped up neatly at the end. You're so right about that.
And so much of it is based on the performances that he gets out of his actors, which I think he better than
What is up with that,
today.
man? How
He
does
gets
he
these performances out of his actors that are pretty extraordinary.
ridiculously
Bradley
extraordinary,
Cooper in American Hustle is
amazing?
fantastic, right?
Bale in American
So
Hustle,
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, they're all great. And yeah, what's her face? Jennifer Law. She's not my favorite actress in the world, but she's so good in that movie because she's playing a variation of that same character who was in Fat City, and
Right.
she does that so well. It's amazing, And Christian Bale in The Fighter, it's like he gets these performances. So his movies I feel live or die on how crazy they're the
Has anyone seen his latest movie, the Joy, with
No, I haven't.
Jennifer Lawrence?
Yeah,
I
in
will
I
see
saw
it.
it. I did.
is it
It's almost this movie, except the Ring is the Home Shopping Network or whatever. It's Jennifer Lawrence is the fighter, and she's kind of tied down by her family. Her family is idiosyncratic to a fault, and full of riddled with flaws, and always taking advantage of her, and this and that and the other thing. And she's got to figure out a way to be herself and overcome and transcend the confines of her own family.
it's very by the numbers, isn't it?
It's funny, man. I mean,
I feel like I'm reading, like with him, I feel this literary New York influence on his writing style, which is very, it's like it was something that would be highly reviewed by certain New York magazines, but there's a formula to it that is widely accepted. Am I imagining this? Or
No, because you said it the best. His performances are extraordinary. So I could listen, I could have problems with this movie or American Hustle, but I'm always going to come back to him because of the performances. So it doesn't really, I'm not going to sit here and say, well, David O. Russell's films, they basically visit the same. Well, first of all, who doesn't visit the same themes as a
Yeah, I
We
mean,
just
at the
talked
same
about
point,
Houston.
John Huston?
Yeah,
and
at
that
the
was
same
okay.
point that it's a flaw, just because
Why
Houston's
is it
bleak
different
and
here?
cynical doesn't mean that it's yeah. Just because Houston's bleak and cynical and has a pessimistic outlook and this sort of this dark bravado running through his films
Yeah.
doesn't mean that he's being any more true than O. Russell is to what his themes are. I mean, maybe the truth is that he worked really hard to accept whatever problems his family had. I mean, I'm sure that that's what this is about. It's definitely about it.
I think it's a very
And-
sincere theme. Obviously, he's obsessed with it and he's working it out through cinema.
I think that's the
and
true.
it's-
I think that's the case.
Yeah,
too,
and
which
it's
is-
clear that
which
in
is
every
laudable.
movie, I didn't like Silver Linings Playbook, but again, I thought Bradley Cooper was amazing in it because he's playing whatever that guy is diagnosed with, the obsessive compulsive or the
Bipolar
extreme
disorder.
bipolar. Yeah, he's conveying that sense of bipolar that is in the movie itself. Like this trying to unite two halves of a fractured psyche. David Russell's doing it in his movies, and Bradley Cooper's performance does it brilliantly in that movie. Like you can see him trying to unite not only the two halves of his brain, but how those two halves relate to the world around him.
Yeah. Bale's performance in this movie is extraordinary. He won an Oscar Best Supporting Actor. Joe, my question to you is, have you ever smoked crack?
Yeah, I have not.
It's funny how this wacky just constantly moving. They say that when Bale took this role, David O. Russell said, Eklund has like kind of this music to him, this rhythm, unlike any other human being he'd ever seen, and he thought that Bale was going to have a difficult time. Bale obviously nails it, and he's just up against what Billy said, kind of like this, his counterpart is his brother, Mickey Ward, who's like this stoic, individual, just kind of, just there, just kind of dry, going through the motions, trying to stay with his family. He's got this new girl now, and, he's trying to maybe shift away from the badness of his family. But Bale here is really the standout, Joe, wouldn't you say?
Oh, he's fucking amazing. Yeah, you said something in your review there, Billy, that Mark Wahlberg was The Rock, and I mean the pairing these two together is just it's just great.
It is.
Yeah,
it's like a comedy team, like the Straight Man.
It is. It's exactly what it is. That's exactly the dynamic that
it's
they
like
have
Mark
here.
Wahlberg and Will Ferrell.
Yes.
Right? Just a great pairing that just is a
Yes.
natural, and you want to see it more than once. Thank God
You just keep coming back.
Thank God they keep coming.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, but I mean, Bale's always like, listen, we talked about Keach and his underrated performance. Obviously, Bale's had, infinite, more success than Keach, ever had. But I mean, Bale's someone that really goes the extra mile, man, for everything that he does, whether it's this film, American Psycho, The Machinist, American Hustle. I mean, The Big Short.
Batman, Tom. Go ahead, say Batman.
How did you know that I was just dancing around that?
Listen, I got to tell you guys, and this, I'm being completely honest. I had a serious dislike for Christian Bale as an actor, and kind of somehow it bubbled over into just him as a person, and really disliked him very, very much. And then I got a 1-2 punch in the past couple of weeks by that motherfucker. Number one,
The Big Short.
What we're talking about right now, this film, which I hadn't seen surprisingly. And then two, I recently watched The Big Short, which we're going to be discussing
doing that on our next episode.
Exactly. And both of those performances absolutely blew me away to the point that I will now publicly admit all is forgiven, Christian. I'm good with you now, dude. You're all right in my book. I look forward.
What was the problem? What was the problem?
It's just one of those things. It's like the same kind of thing, like why I don't eat tomatoes. I don't know. It's just there's something
I know
just really repulsive about the whole thing.
Yeah, and I've gone through that, with actors where I'm just like, I can't stand them, and then I thought he was overrated, and just and. Seriously, though, these two roles have completely the performances, I should say, have.
He's in The Big Short, man. You guys are going to enjoy that. That he's so good in that.
Absolutely,
I saw The Big Short. It's we'll talk about it then.
We're going to talk.
You want
to
just launch into it now, Tom?
All right, let me do my intro to The Big Short. Here I go. That's great.
Just make it up as you go, Tom.
Why not? Well, who doesn't do that? Hey, Billy, you mentioned a documentary that I hadn't seen called Boxing Gym. Talk to me about that.
It's it's from back in 2010. I remember hearing about it. I just watched it a week or two ago, and it's it's part of there seems to be a movement of documentaries right now that are very non-invasive. They just sort of let the camera stay in a setting for an extended period of time, and then the footage is edited together in a poetic way, like Sweetgrass. Did you guys ever see that one?
No.
Sweetgrass is one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. It's just about moving sheep over the mountains.
Have that in my Netflix queue, and it's been there for a long time. I haven't
pure
seen it, but it looks fascinating.
Poetry. I cannot recommend it enough. And the same crew who it's again, it's hard to describe unless you've seen it, but it's just this non-invasive way of doing it. And you just are sort of a fly on the wall watching time pass. And that's what Boxing Gym is. And you just see these people come and go and just practice. And it's almost like without there being a narrative to it, you start to fill in the narrative yourself, and you start to just feel something about everyone involved. And it's really fascinating. Definitely worth a look.
I never heard of it, and I'll definitely put it on my radar. I love boxing documentaries. I mean, there's no doubt. There's, we mentioned earlier, there's been some really good Mike Tyson documentaries.
I was going to ask, out of the 1,200 that are on Netflix, which do you recommend, Tom?
Probably there's. there's not. I'll tell you what my favorite one is, and it's not on Netflix, and it's kind of hard to find, but it was probably the first boxing documentary I had ever watched, and it is called Champions Forever. And it's this awesome documentary about Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, and Ken Norton, and how they all kind of fought
Oh,
each other.
heavyweight champs from champions for
Yeah,
world
and
heavyweight
there's
champs
this,
in
yeah,
1999.
it's and it just covers that whole decade, and it kind of climaxes with the Muhammad Ali, and Larry Holmes is involved in that too. It's five of them. It's Larry Holmes too, and the whole documentary kind of climaxes with the Muhammad Ali Larry Holmes fight, which was, and I mean, it was atrocious. I mean, Ali shouldn't have been in the fight. He was too old, and Larry Holmes was like, that was his idol, and he was Ali's sparring partner when he was younger, and he just kind of like just beat this man for like 10 rounds. And anyway, the documentary climaxes with this fight, and I just always remember it being watching the end of that fight and watching it being the fight being stopped, and the way the filmmakers kind of played this sad piano music to it always moved me so much, where I mean I just cry watching it. So Champions Forever, I mean, that's something to look for. Also, there's a really great this might be on Netflix. In 2008, filmmaker James Toback did a Mike Tyson documentary called Tyson.
That's the
That
one that I've wanted to see for a while because I heard
Yeah,
it was really good.
I like Toback too. I mean, he's an interesting dude. Uh, he's done a few good movies. That documentary is just jaw dropping because he really just lets Tyson just talk in front of a camera
Yeah,
about
I
his
saw that
life,
one.
and it's mind blowing. It really is. Uh,
It's sad. It makes you feel a lot of empathy for Tyson
yeah,
as being victimized.
absolutely.
So
Yeah,
many people over the years have said like it's. I never really. Would like to know more about it, but so many like public figures have kind of supported him over the years, like tried to.
dude, 20 years old, he won the heavyweight championship of the world. He was manipulated by the worst of the worst.
Yeah,
Robin Givens' mother, who's one of the worst human beings on the planet. Don
Don King.
King, absolutely one of the worst.
What was his original trainer? Unfortunately,
Well,
his trainer died.
Customato died
Customato,
when Tyson had only about 10 pro fights. And
right?
Kevin Rooney, who was kind of like the co-trainer, took over. And he was managed by two men, Bill Caton and Jim Jacobs. And Jacobs was very close to Tyson. And Jacobs kind of died shortly after Tyson won the title. And that's when the Sharks came in. When Jacobs wasn't around and King began a manipulation with Givens, with Tyson to get rid of Bill Caton and Kevin Rooney. That's when the thing started to spiral out of control for him. Like he lost that Douglas fight in Tokyo, which is one of the most surreal boxing events of all time because King Kong is being beaten to a pulp in Tokyo. Quiet crowd. I mean, the whole place was just silent. It was so surreal. I remember watching that fight. It was so surreal. And the corner that King gave Tyson, these dudes, they were thugs. They had no idea what the hell they were doing. They had no advice to give him. They didn't know how to, take swelling down, work cuts on the eye. They had no idea. I mean, this guy was just a lost dog at this point. And it is, it is sad. And I'm not saying that Tyson doesn't have badness in him, man. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that, to say the things that he does and to do the things that he does takes, takes violence but he's also a really, I think he's a really smart guy, and I think he's very emotional, and there's a lot of beauty to him too, which is really weird. And Toback, I think, does a great job in that film, just letting him talk, and
Yeah,
and you really get a great understanding
Tyson is
of
one of those
who he is.
dudes where you listen to just like I've heard snippets of interviews with him over the years, and there's always an insight to him. Like there's an intelligence intellects at work in there that he knows exactly what the fuck is going on. Like,
yeah, no doubt.
He's just like, he's one of those dudes who cuts through bullshit so fast, it's unbelievable. Like, it's just these little pithy comments he makes. You're like, damn, there's a serious intellect at work under there.
Yeah, he's really one of the most fascinating sports figures, I think, in the over the past century, without a doubt. I've always been fascinated with him. Hey, you know what I wanted to ask you guys too? Any other boxing movies? Because it's really, I mean, there's been so many of them, and it was great to cover Rocky, and it was great to find that hidden gem in Fat City, and David O. Russell doing The Fighter. I'm sure we could typically throw Raging Bull out there, and Ali or whatever. Do any of you guys have maybe some?
I think the one that really Rocky was groundbreaking, but I think that Rocky was groundbreaking because it stayed so close to this picture called Somebody Up There Likes Me.
Rocky Graziano story.
Yeah, Paul Newman,
sure.
Rocky Graziano. When I watched that movie, I was like, oh my God, this is Rocky. It's Rocky,
Wow. Yeah.
In a lot of ways. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but I think that maybe it was a huge turning point for the genre.
That's Somebody Up There Likes Me, guys, and that's Paul Newman as Rocky Graziano.
Yeah.
I read that book when I was a teenager, and it's really difficult because it's written the way Graziano talks.
Is that right?
So it's a really weird read. I read it
phonetically.
Yeah, what's that?
Like phonetically.
Yeah,
spelling.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, it's weird.
There's a movie called Diggstown.
Okay.
That is with Lou Gossett Jr. and I cannot remember who else is. It might James Woods, and I want to say it's probably an '80s film, and I remember going to see it with my mom. Maybe Michael Ritchie directed that, and I
love Michael Ritchie.
I don't know if I could even vouch for it. It's been that long.
Okay,
but I remember at the time anyway enjoying it, and again, it was a boxing movie, so my mom and I went to go see that one.
Billy.
Plus, I think she had a thing for Lou Gossett Jr.
She liked black men, did you?
To this day.
Is that right?
In fact, I told you we took her pole dancing for her birthday, or to a pole dancing show, and she commented on the bouncers being very sexy and big, giant, African American men. That she definitely was flirting with.
Billy, you got a different one for us out there?
I'm gonna have to go with Raging Bull. It's a cliche answer, but that thing is a friggin' masterpiece. I mean, from the opening shot where the credits are rolling over the slow motion shot of the Italian opera playing, and he's the flashes are going off and everything. It's just a masterpiece, the whole thing. But I wanted to I couldn't shoehorn this into the review, but the whole cliche of the boxing picture, I was trying to find out how far back in Hollywood it went, and the earliest I can find is The Champ from 1931. Which is a Wallace Beery, Jackie Cooper picture.
Wallace Beery. The Coen brothers love Wallace Beery.
Yeah, and it's I guarantee you, I've seen it. I saw it years ago, but I don't remember it. I guarantee you it was an inspiration for Barton Fink and the whole concept of the wrestling picture.
Right.
The
they will destroy you.
They remade that film.
The tropes are in place. It's a ex-heavyweight champ who's over the hill, and he's an alcoholic, and his kid still loves him, and he's trying.
Adam, you're right. The Champ.
Yeah, they remade it with John Voight and Ricky Schroeder's first film.
Yep. That's right. My wife, for some crazy reason, it was like a huge movie for my wife. She made us all sit down and watch that movie. I'd never seen it before, and she really wanted my kids to see that movie.
The Champ.
Yeah,
you've never seen
two of them. The one Billy's talking about in the remake. Yeah,
all I remember is always when I was a little kid wanting to watch The Champ. It was always on cable, and he cries when he dies at the end, and Schroeder's crying. There's a really good movie too from 1970 with James Earl Jones called the Great White Hope.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's a really good one. That would have worked too if we didn't do Fat City. That would have been one I would have picked. And that's a really, really good film. And that's
Tom. Have you ever tried to box any? I mean, it sounds like you're a big boxer.
Question. Yeah, I did when I was about 15. I went to a gym in South River. I attended for a few weeks.
You're a big guy. What you how
I
so
was big.
you-
I was skinny. When I was a teenager, I was. I mean, I was
Right,
lanky.
right.
I wasn't like big like I am now.
Right.
What was I going to say? But I did go to the gym. The gym where my uncle first started, and I did it for about a month. And I think it was about a month into it, I went into like a light sparring session, and I decided that it wasn't for me because
Why?
because I didn't like being hit.
Right.
Yeah, that would be a problem.
Did you like punching people? Though?
I like the heavy bag, like doing the heavy bag. I remember liking that a lot. I did a lot of running, a lot of jump. The guy just had like the first 2 weeks I was there, like all I did was jump rope. Like that's you just be like I'd walk in and the old guy would be like, "Hey kid, grab a rope," and like from 6 to 8 I would just jump rope like 4 nights a week.
The boxing takes off. I mean, you need to have some serious friggin' stamina to sit there and throw punches for that long, man. I mean,
intense, man. There's a lot of
you need to be in good shape. That's why you jumping rope like that.
yeah,
Right?
of course. I mean, yeah, you jump rope, and he makes sure you got to get up, you got to run. It's not really lifting weights. You don't really lift weights too much,
Right.
but there's all that sit ups and push ups. You got to do. Like I said, I really loved the heavy bag. Like I really enjoyed the heavy bag and the speed bag. I was not very good at that. Like I
Right.
couldn't really get.
Takes
Yeah,
coordination.
it took a lot of coordination. I just wasn't good at it. Like I wasn't fast at it anyway. But I could kind of do it.
Who do you think is the best fighter on the show, Tom? Would you think Max might be the toughest guy on the show? Do you think he could be?
Pull out a
Max?
gun and shoot you.
Yeah, the 4, 5, the 6. Who's how many people do we have now? Six of us left. There's 6. Probably me,
You think you're the toughest guy?
without a doubt.
Adam, are you a fighter? Or either you or the other guy's a fighter? Really? Have you been in fights?
A
Boxing
couple
and-
mild ones. I got punched in the head a couple times in Times Square, and I had it coming, but it did teach me that I could take a couple punches. I went to a boxing gym when I lived down at the beach about 10 years ago. I did belong to a boxing gym, and I would go, and I didn't spar, but I would go and work with a trainer at the gym, and I would take some classes, and I definitely would hit the heavy bag. And that was what you just said, Joe, is so true. I never really understood, even watching boxing sometimes when I was younger, why the guys would be hanging on each other. And it did not take long hitting a heavy bag. I went, holy shit!
It takes a lot.
How do these guys do that? And back then, like 15 rounds, but 12 rounds of just slugging it out. I mean, your arms just become rubber.
Sure,
but it was
you're getting hit in the arms too. I mean, on top of that.
It's just you don't realize it. Like you think that you get tired, like when you're running or something like that, but that exertion takes so much out of you, man. Like I was at one of these rock climbing places not too long ago, just holding on to those friggin' rocks. I mean, you don't realize that just exerting yourself, strength is really just takes a lot out of you. And boxing is just nothing but full on exertion for 3 full minutes at a time.
exhausting. And this was back when I was actually in decent shape and playing volleyball and riding my bike. I mean, it was still just a hell of a workout. Seriously.
Got punched.
Did you ever get in a fight with Max? Like roll around?
No, I'm
Drunk.
not a fighter. I'm not a fighter. I'm a big dude, like I'm like over 6'2" and over 250. So people never really necessarily would, ever try to instigate anything with me.
And Max is a small guy.
He's a scrappy
Max,
little dude.
Like 5'2", but he's heavy.
He's like 5'4". But no, he's scrappy, and he's like a bulldog. Like he'd probably bite onto your leg and just like not let go. So you'd have to watch out for him. Absolutely.
You think Max could hold his own, huh, Adam?
Yeah. Max could channel some rage, but the dude has a lot of weaknesses. He's got the hydrocele. He's got an aneurysm.
He's got everything.
He's got bad
at the doctor every
allergies. There's
day.
a lot of things. He can get in a sneezing fit in the middle of it all, and there's a lot of ways you could work around it. But no, I'd want him on my team. Absolutely.
Billy, I bet I could be wrong, but I would think that you probably never got into a fight, right?
Never been in a fight.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I mean when I was a kid, but
Right.
that doesn't really count. You
But
know?
nothing as an adult, right?
No, never. I never ever found myself in a situation
That's great. Well, sometimes it could
Yeah.
just find you, you know. I mean, you just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time at a bar, whatever, you know, and there's some jerk. Joe, you could scrap. There's no doubt in my mind.
Not really. No.
Come on, you're Italian.
Yeah, I sing
Just
opera.
because you're
He
Italian.
sings opera. He makes
I
meatballs.
sing opera while
Oh,
what's
stop.
the opening
I'm being
scene of
funny.
Raging Bull?
What?
The lights are flashing and there's opera playing. No, I was in a few little scruffs when I was when I was like 17
Sure.
or 18.
Well, you
was
come
probably
from
the
like,
last one.
North Jersey, man. Come on.
Yeah, I was not. Yeah, I mean a little bit. Again, when I was
That crowd you hung out with. Come on. I know
those
those
guys,
guys.
a lot of the guys. Yeah, I
No
mean,
doubt about it,
I
those
was
guys.
not much. I wasn't as much of a fighter as those
I
guys.
think they
were.
beat me up one night.
Those guys, my friend, some of them, man, really did get into some,
I bet
some
they did.
nasty fights, man. Yeah, and I've had to fight one time. Okay, here's one.
There we
here's the
go.
story.
Fine.
So one time they used to have this thing called the World Football League. Do you remember that, Tom?
World
They used to
Football
fl-
League.
Do you remember that?
Fantastic. Yes, we had the LA Express.
Oh, the USFL, you mean, Joe?
Yeah, it used to be was
The
that
New
it?
Jersey Generals?
The New Jersey Knights, I think it was.
Knights.
Maybe it was the Generals. I don't know. They used to play in Giant Stadium. We used to go to the games.
USFL.
Summer
yeah,
League.
and-
Yeah, it was a summer league.
And they used to, yes, exactly. And it used to be like they just used to let everybody there. They sold as much beer as possible to everybody, and there weren't many people there. So there was a lot of rowdiness going on. And one time, oh God, Jesus Christ, I believe I'm saying this. They was like buying a joint like at halftime.
Whispers it.
Don't worry, no one's
on the
listening,
ramp.
Yeah, no,
On the
What's
ramp,
that
right? So I'm on the so I'm on the ramp at Giant Stadium, and the guy sees me by the joint, and then he just thinks he's entitled to it. He comes over, and he says, "Yo, man, give me that joint," And I was like, I just put it away, and I was like, all right, I know I'm gonna fight here. I mean, I just knew I was gonna fight, and then all of a sudden, my buddies were behind me, and we got into this brawl on the ramp in Giant Stadium. That was like, it encompassed the whole ramp, and people were like watching. It was just that those games were crazy, man, and we got into fights in the parking lot later too. I don't know
like
what
a comic
happened,
book,
that
Joe.
it was crazy, man. It was insane. That was really the last time I really got in a fight. It was, I guess I was like 18 years old. It was ridiculous. And out in that parking lot, somebody started fighting, and we were there was another big brawl like later. I think it's just because everybody was just so friggin' drunk. And then I'm like sparring with this guy, and he pulls a badge out, and he was like a friggin' like I was beating him in the head, and he pulls a badge out. He was like a friggin' cop. I was like, all right, I guess the fight's over. And then he went to go help his buddies, and I was like, all right, I'm out of here. So
Oh my God.
yeah, it was ridiculous.
Football.
It was fucking
Bringing
ridiculous.
the best out of humanity.
I think I was 17 years old.
Wow.
That was the last time.
Giant Stadium.
There's a New Jersey brawl fight for you.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. That's all I wanted from you. Thank you so much. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap up this pugilistic experience, man. It was a lot of fun. Joe, thank you very much. Billy, Adam, thank you so much for watching the movies and commenting on them. I had a blast. We are going to be back in a couple weeks with The Big Short. Adam's programming some films over the next couple episodes. I look forward to that. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast is produced by Joe Christiana and Tom Detloff, and it is edited by Joe Christiana. I'd also like to thank Jeremy Garcia of Dartboard Cinema. Check out his podcast as well. Jeremy helps us out with all our social networking. He does a great job. And Joe, we'll try to get him on, I guess, on the last episode like we always do, right?
Is it the last episode ever, Tom?
We'll find out in a couple weeks. How about that, Joe?
Yo, you can't. All right.
Come on, Joe. We've
You're not
come
gonna
all
tease us.
this
What
way.
are you
We've come
thinking?
all
What
this
does it
way
look
here,
like?
you know?
No teasing, no hints about what's gonna happen for the future of the show.
I think that it's best to just wait until our next episode, Joe.
What do you think
I
that
think
means?
we should definitely wait.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's you'll find out soon enough, Joe.
Are you gonna spring something weird on us?
No, it's just basically the announcement.
Okay. Okay.
The announcement, Joe. It's coming.
It's the announcement show.
That means it's coming to an end.
You could like us on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter, Thomas Detloff at TCRM Podcast. Joe, poor Joe. Don't worry, Joe. Everything will be okay.
I'm not worried. I'm just gonna have to box you the next time I see you.
Right.
I'm gonna have to. I'll meet you at Giant Stadium.
Sure,
Tom.
fair enough.
Now we're all going to have to find new jobs to pay the bills.
I know. Everyone's getting laid off. Check out Max's blog, maxcookuncorked.com, Joe's Filmwork at christianaproductions.com. Any book stuff going on, Joe?
No, if you're hearing this after August of 2016, look for my book Atavist Falls. It's on its way.
Nice. And Adam, we're still at starlandpc.com?
We are not, but I will be revealing more information on that on the next show.
All right, good. I look forward to that. All right, that's it. We're over and we're out. Ciao. See you next time.
Tune in next time to satisfy more of your strange desires. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast. We do chicken right.
Confront id. The themes tend to be bone deep. Stallone poured into Rocky the fear of being near 30 years old without a career breakthrough. The hero of Creed used anger to shadowbox his way out of family expectations. $1 Million Baby was about losing the biggest bout of them all, unfairly no less, because real life does cheat. The great 2010 documentary Boxing Gym feels like a meditation on time itself, the gym's timer buzzing off at intervals regular as a Buddhist chant. Maybe the greatest of them all is Raging Bull, in true Scorsese fashion, the story of a man's fear that he is mere animal, that there is no angel buried in the flesh. The plots always build their drum roll outside the ring, before the fight, between the fights, rolling up a pulse and rhythm that comes straight from the human artery, the will to stay upright, stay alive, stay awake, fighting, sweating, and in pain but alive. The real enemy is always the hero's soft spot. The opponent is just the guy to hit him there, hard as he can. The Fighter from 2010 has David O. Russell in its corner, but this is all Mark Wahlberg's fight. His fingerprints are on every scene, the production carried on his shoulders for years as a passion project passed from one director to another. The film is based on the true life story of Mickey Ward, who followed in his older brother's footsteps as a pro boxer, struggling with continued losses and going on a hiatus before fighting his way back to become a champion. The parallels here are not insignificant. Wahlberg is also from a large Boston suburbs family, with an older brother reaching early fame as a member of New Kids on the Block. Mark followed in his brother's footsteps but lost his way in an adolescence of gang running, racist street attacks, and stints in jail before getting himself together and fighting to become one of Hollywood's go-to leading men. What war stories Ward and Wahlberg must have had the first time they sat down over a beer. I wonder about people like this sometimes. The tenacity that they have must be extraordinary. Something ingrained and nurtured to near indestructibility. What an ornery cuss you've got to be to punch your way out of those voices in your head, keeping you down, telling you it's too late, it's over, give up. It's what makes the boxing picture such a visceral thrill, the violence of a man's rage turned outward and inward at once, not only for destruction but for purification. Family itself is the fear Ward confronts in The Fighter, or perhaps allegiance to family, to the identity it gives Ward because he lacks the resolve to strike out and craft, define, and defend his own identity. His mother is domineering, a hurricane of big hair and big nails and cigarette smoke, well played by Melissa Leo. His sisters ride the wind like harpies, pelting him from every side, keeping him contained in the eye of the storm. Ward steps to the edge, threatening to escape, but he's too afraid, a dog who's been on the leash too long. It takes a woman from the outside to yank him free and set him straight. It's no wonder the real family of Mickey Ward took issue with their representation here, because they're the movie's real villain. This is material squarely in the David O. Russell wheelhouse. From Flirting with Disaster to Silver Linings Playbook, he's been chronicling the struggle of people caught by familial identity for 2 decades. Russell's films generally don't move me, and I can't say why exactly. They seem too cute, like New Yorker cartoons only New Yorker readers find clever. Hollywood retains the richest storehouse of American mythology in our time, and if its coffers are regularly looted to vacancy, as in the case of the Western, the musical, or the film noir, they are also refilled by the looting of other stores: video games, TV shows, home video, and of course comic book superheroes. For about 50 years, give or take, the Western was the gold standard for white America's mythology, like the Greeks who rewrote the sack of Troy as a revenge saga for some imagined Trojan slight. So Hollywood decked itself in the props and dressings of the Western as a celebration of our achievement, in all defiance of the historical facts and plain contradiction. Monument Valley, the Great Plains, cattle herds, and cowboy hats, all symbols of romance. Great directors would challenge the infallibility of the myth, questioning the morals of the sheriff, the rancher, the gun, and the rope. So powerful are the tropes of the genre that, despite its relative unuse in our time, directors like Andrew Dominik and Quentin Tarantino have mined its riches explicitly to expose the hypocrisies at the heart of American culture. Then there's the boxing picture, its scruffy urban counterpart, sappy, sentimental, and tough all at once, America's blood-spattered answer to Charles Dickens' Victorian melodramas. It is indoor cinema, about small rooms and tight spaces with no room to maneuver. Unlike the Western, there are no panoramic horizons, only a 4-sided ring bound by elastic ropes and a carousel of flashing lights. The cheers from unseen faces, screaming, cheering, and booing. The props are minimalist, almost surreal. Gloves, shoes, a robe, a towel, sweat, blood, the ring of a bell, and the referee's count. Unburdened by politics or historicity, as in the case of the Western, or the moral transgression of crime pictures, because neither heroes or villains are ever killed by gunfire in the ring, the boxing picture is just about a guy beating another guy. The setting itself, the bright ring at center of a dark hall, distant cousin to the cinema itself, is a kind of Freudian snapshot of the inner psyche, ego strutting down the aisle to its theme song, about to